Hi, I'm Patrick Krupka. I'm a chiropractor and a nutritionist, and I run a functional medicine practice here in Houston, Texas. I'm also the author of an ebook called 6 Simple Blood Tests That Can Change Your Life and Why Your Doctor Won't Order Them. So last week I released a video on explaining female hormones. Those of you that saw the video will recognize this graph. It's not exactly the same as last time, but it's close enough for what we're doing today. So that generated a whole lot of responses and comments and questions that let me know that it's a subject that has a lot of interest out there. So I'm going to do this video today, another one, to go a little bit deeper into what controls all of this, so that if you have issues with this, understanding how it's supposed to work and what controls it, you may be able to do a better job of figuring out where your problem is, and to some degree what should be done to get that under control. So quick recap. We talked about estrogen being dominant for the first 2 weeks during the follicular phase. We talked about progesterone being dominant in the latter 2 weeks of the cycle, which is the luteal phase. You've got your cycle running from day 1 to day 28, again, roughly an average 28-day cycle. You've got your 2 phases of influence. You've got your estrogen influence, your progesterone influence. Hopefully, the pituitary produces FSH and LH on time, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, so that the ovaries release an egg like they're supposed to, and the cycle continues. So this is, in a sense, what we went through last time. Now, what I'm going to talk about a little bit this time is what controls this. This doesn't just happen randomly, although it would be nice if it did. We have organs and glands whose job it is to produce the hormones necessary to make this work. Now, obviously that's estrogen and progesterone, but let's back up a little bit. The ovaries produce estrogen and progesterone, but they produce that on demand. Something has to tell them to produce those hormones, and it has to tell them when to do it. There is a kind of control and coordination center in all of this. So if we went upstream into the brain, we would find 2 important pieces of the brain up there in relation to this. One is the hypothalamus, the other is the pituitary. Now, we have several different, in our field we call them axes of communication. We have a hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. We have a hypothalamic pituitary and thyroid axis. We have a hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis. We're talking about the ovarian axis, and we will be talking about the adrenal axis a little bit. So the hypothalamus releases a hormone that tells the pituitary that it's time to start this process. The pituitary then communicates with the ovaries and tells them to produce estrogen. They produce estrogen in an increasing amount, and then at some point of the month you start to produce follicle stimulating hormone, the estrogen falls, this whole crossover occurs. The pituitary releases luteinizing hormone, and the ovaries switch over to start producing progesterone. And then progesterone takes you on out to the end of the cycle. So that's the ovaries handle this, but under the direction of the pituitary and the hypothalamus. If this is not working properly, one of the possibilities is that the pituitary and or the hypothalamus are not functioning properly or are not capable of communicating properly to the ovaries. It is also entirely possible that they're communicating just fine, but the ovaries are not responsive enough to that. Right? We call that an ovarian response index when we look at that on lab work. And we can see whether or not the ovaries are likely to respond to the hormones that are being produced by the pituitary. Now, the pituitary also tells the adrenal glands what to do. And if you go to my YouTube channel, there are 2 or 3 videos on adrenal function and adrenal physiology. They were made a while ago, but the information is still accurate. And they'll help you understand this in an adrenal sense. But for our purposes here today, the adrenal glands produce, again, under the direction of the hypothalamus and the pituitary, the adrenal glands produce a hormone called DHEA, or dihydroepiandrosterone. So DHEA is a precursor to the androgens, to estrogen and progesterone. To estrogen and testosterone, excuse me. So by virtue of the adrenals making the early stage product that then becomes estrogen, testosterone, and to some degree pregnenolone is influenced by the adrenals, and that becomes progesterone. If your adrenal glands are not functioning properly, and that has a lot to do with the amount of stress in your life, with your sleeping and waking patterns, with stimulants that you consume, like caffeine and nicotine, things like that. If those aren't functioning properly, then the adrenal glands are not going to function properly. If they're not making the precursors to estrogen and progesterone like they're supposed to, then the pituitary and the hypothalamus can do their job all day long. The ovaries can try to do their job, but if they're not getting enough raw materials to begin the process, they cannot make estrogen and progesterone the way they're supposed to. The adrenal glands, if you look at them almost like an anthropologist would, the adrenal glands provide a link between stress and menstruation. If you think about it, all the way back to prehistoric times, the stress that you would have been under would be starvation or attack by wild animals or dehydration. It would be something along those lines. Well, under those conditions, the adrenal glands would have reacted in a stress response. And during that stress response, they likely would have affected your body's ability to produce these hormones. Because if you're under that kind of stress for prolonged periods of time, you don't need to be getting pregnant. Your body can't commit the resources to creating a child under those circumstances. So it would affect the hormones. You wouldn't menstruate very well, you wouldn't ovulate properly. Until the stress was gone, everything kind of calmed down. You'd start ovulating appropriately again, and then you could get pregnant. And it's somewhat of a protective mechanism under times of significant duress. Well, fast forward to what we've got going on today, and we have significantly different stresses. I mean, yes, we have some of those short burst kind of intense stresses in our lives, but we've got finances and marriages and taxes and businesses and kids and sports teams and grades at school and all sorts of things like that are more long-term stressors. And then we add stress by not sleeping well and not eating well and not hydrating well. All of those build up over time and you can get adrenal dysfunction. The adrenal glands are kind of stuck between working and not working, or they don't work well, but they're not shut down completely. You don't have Addison's or Cushing's, which are the two extremes of adrenal dysfunction, but you've got this inappropriate functioning or non-optimal functioning. Under those conditions, this will not work well. You're going to have issues here. When I have people that come in and their sleeping and waking patterns are not appropriate, their periods are not appropriate, they get dizzy when they go from lying down to standing up, they crave salts and sweets, they get cramps in their legs and their feet, they have a tendency toward anxiety, depression, lethargy, all of those things. When you put those together, you've got someone who has adrenal dysfunction. Okay? At that point, you're not going to be able to see resolution here unless you first address that hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis and get that working appropriately. If the adrenal glands are working well and this still is not working properly, then you can look at the hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis and see where the problems are there. Most of this can be resolved by removing the lifestyle factors that affect whichever particular system you're dealing with, adding in lifestyle factors that protect the function of those or promote the proper function of those, and then making sure that the nutrition the person is taking in or that you're taking in is appropriate to support this system and to make it work appropriately. Many people find that they feel healthier when they're taking care of their health, getting ready to get pregnant. When you decide you're going to get pregnant and you plan for a pregnancy, you take care of yourself differently because you know you're about to be growing a baby. This is your one chance to get it right from the very beginning. So all of a sudden you're sleeping, you're drinking water, you're eating good foods, you're not eating the trash, you're off the caffeine, you've quit smoking, all of that stuff changes. And lo and behold, your periods change. They start to normalize, right? That's because you've gotten your life under control. So understand that this is influenced by lots of different factors, most of which can be rectified without needing medication. Simply a matter of understanding how it's supposed to work and understanding what you're doing to get in its way. So hopefully that helped you out understanding a little bit more about what's behind all of this and what can actually be done to make a difference. If you have dysfunction here and someone puts you on the pill, That will give you a period every month if it works appropriately. But it's not changing the underlying function here. When you get off the pill later on, there's a good chance you're right back where you started and this still is not functioning properly. So that's okay short term, but that's not going to create a system that works the way it was designed to work. So please leave me more questions if you have them. That worked really well last time, so just comment below the video and share your questions. If there are enough questions about a specific issue, I'll make another video for it. I have no problem doing that. The goal of this is to educate you about how your bodies are supposed to work so you can get the help you need when you need it and even recognize when there's a problem. So I hope this served you well today. I hope that answered some of the questions that were posted under the video last time. As I said before, until the next video, I want you to eat for your health, train for performance, and live the life you love today. Thanks for watching.